revisit some of the children's books from when you were a kid. I promise they'll be way more terrifying than you ever realized. Just look at a few of my top hits. A girl doesn't want to eat lima beans because she's embarrassed, and then boom, look at that. That's crazy. Or how about the one about the boy who just takes and takes and takes from the tree until it's nothing but a stump? It's just heartbreaking. Why are children's books so unintentionally scary and creepy? I found this bizarre pattern in children's books that I'm going to break down because it helped me rethink creativity, writing, art, and just generally being a better person. Let's start with a brief history of how children's books became children's books. If you look back at pre-17th century books, you can see that there wasn't really a difference between the books that were meant for children or for adults. But as reading became more widespread, you had books like Aesop's Fables, which were morality tales. By the 19th century, you had this golden age of children's literature, or at least that's what some historians consider it. And there was this big boom around fantasy, fairy tales. You had stories like Grimm's Fairy Tales, Alice in Wonderland, or Little Women even. By the 19th to 20th century, you started to have picture books emerge, like Winnie the Pooh. And then from there became this whole commercial side of things with mass production, which leads up to the children's books that we have today. But I want to go back to some of those fairy tales from the early 1800s, because I'm sure as you're well aware, some of those stories are the most unintentionally horrifying children's books. Let's take the original Little Mermaid story by Hans Christian Andersen. It was far more twisted and diabolical than you might realize. I won't go through the entire plot, but in the original story, things go sideways as soon as she becomes a human. The Little Mermaid is described as feeling excruciating pain when walking on her new human legs. The experience of losing her tail is described as like a sword passing through her body. At the end of the story, she's presented with a horrifying ultimatum. She must either murder the prince to break the spell, or live on human legs and endure excruciating pain. According to the story, she chooses another option, jumps into the ocean, and turns into pearly foam. Then she turns into a spirit and rises into the air. Her fellow daughters of the air explain that she must spend the next 300 years doing good in order to gain immortality. If she helps good children, she can shave a year off. But if a child cries because of her, she will have a day added to her sentence. Ultimately, fairy tales are the original unintentionally scary books for children, in my opinion. It's because these stories are meant to teach something and not just entertain. They wanted to separate kids' stories from the ones for adults, but they also wanted to provide the important human lessons that any story should give. Some people may say that that idea has been lost along the way, but I don't necessarily think that's the case. Let's go all the way back to A Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon, the example I gave in the beginning. A Bad Case of Stripes isn't just a PSA about why you should eat your vegetables. Shannon's writing and illustration tells the story of Camilla, who rejected lima beans because her friends hated them. The length she went to fit in is what caused her to transform. This is a powerful and useful story for children because it warns against changing who we are to benefit others. Camilla is ultimately cured when she finally admits that she likes lima beans. Just generally, some of these stories may seem scary, but for any child who wishes to grow up and be prepared for adulthood, you need to be able to brace for challenges. These types of books are helpful because they help children experience conflict without having to actually experience it, if that makes sense. We all live in this crazy, upside-down world filled with problems, and the idea of a child being confronted with those problems on even a metaphorical level is terrifying for adults. These books maybe aren't actually scary when reading them as children. They're only scary to us as adults. I also just want to mention that not all children's books may appear that scary. A lot of kids' books like The Little Caterpillar or others, are perfectly sweet whether you're a child or an adult. Anyway, thank you for watching.